Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KickBadger.com, out here for another gear review, and today talking switches, buttons. This guy right here by Modlite, which is the Modbutton Dual Lead. So what is it? What does it actually do? Well, as it sounds, it is a single button with two leads, one of which marries up to any of your lasers. As far as this mount right here, this will plug into, by way of example, the Steiner OTAL. It'll also plug into like your mall, PEC 15, pretty much any laser. And then our other lead basically marries up to this SureFire connector. So any of your tail caps that have that type of connector, it will marry up to that. And it is a momentary, so when we apply pressure, it's the only time it's on, but it allows us to apply pressure and activate two different devices, one being a laser, the other being some sort of illuminator. In this case, a Kiji. So on a certain level, you're just kind of like, cool, whatever, big deal. It is actually a big deal. On the one hand, it allows for your higher current in more modern batteries. So traditionally, some of the switches wouldn't work with your high current batteries, things using like 18650, 18350 rechargeables. So this will work with that. And it's a dual lead. So where this really shines is on the market. There are a lot of lasers, to include this one, which either don't have an illuminator or honestly, the illuminator is pretty much garbage. Most lasers with onboard IR illuminators, kind of hot garbage. Don't get emotionally attached to a piece of gear. Like they are. There's better stuff out there. If you have one, use it because you have it for sure. But what it allows is you to upgrade a IR laser that's honestly lacking. Like not because the laser doesn't work well, but you need IR illumination. So you need to figure something out. Or even if you had like some of the D-balls, again, still IR illuminator sucks. Same with your Holosun, sorry not sorry. What this allows is you to run something that actually works really good, like a Vexel laser, in which case we have this Kiji right here, 1040, and run a dual lead. So over here, this is mounted in the Echo Arms twin body. So I actually have a white light, SureFire turbo head, protected clicky switch. But then back here, I have this SureFire head, which does a clicky switch should this switch die on me, which fortunately it has not. And I can run this lead back to this switch and the lead from my laser to this switch. So when I mash this, I immediately have my IR laser and IR illuminator, which is a pretty big deal. It basically breathes life into a lot of kind of less than optimal laser setups. Which brings us to how have I used it and how has it done for me? Well, I've shot it actually on a number of different host guns, to include my Quick Hatch by Rifle Dynamics, and one, it's a cool gun, and a modernized AK, in that you actually have pick rail as well as sections of M-LOK, so you can mount modern stuff, to include lights and lasers. So I ended up shooting that gun at a press check night fighter course with Chuck Pressburg, and it did a good job for me. I ended up being able to run, again, this Steiner OTAL in conjunction with a Kiji, so I had my IR illumination, and ran it to this one button. Also, the way you can set this button up, you can either mount it directly to M-LOK or you can mount it to pick rail, depending on how you're going to set your gun up. There, I actually had it mounted on the side over onto M-LOK. I will say I ran into something weird with it, where I feel like inside here, there's kind of both leads coming to almost two switches, to where if I wasn't just mashing it down, and part of it had to do with just how I was gripping that gun, how I was holding it. I guess at that point I was shooting other strong side and like mashing it. And sometimes I would get the laser and sometimes I would get the illuminator if I wasn't pressing directly on it. And I think that had to do honestly with me being cold, wearing gloves, and just mashing it weird. I don't know. I will say moving forward, never really ran into that again. So I don't know. Sample says one-off occurrence. But I ended up using that same button with kind of a different setup when I shot the Red October After Dark, again on that quick hatch by Rifle Dynamics. That time I was running a Maul on top, and I was also running a SureFire Vampire, which made for a really cool setup. What it allowed is for me to, again, this doesn't care what laser it gets plugged into, this doesn't care what light. So having this plugged into my SureFire Vampire, and then this plugged into the Maul, I could turn my Maul to Viz, I could turn my Vampire to white light. So when I mashed that one button, I would have white light and my green Viz laser, which was really cool. Then when I was going into the IR spectrum, change that over to IR on my Maul, change my Vampire over to IR, and I would actually move my Maul up to where it was really high beam, so it's concentrated like that Vexel laser. So when I'd mash that mod button, dual lead, I would have this really tight focused IR illumination and my IR laser, and basically an IR flood from my Vampire using that, which worked out really well. I then took this whole setup right here, light, laser, switch, everything like that, and mounted it on a FAL and shot in another night vision course, this time with Holistic Solutions Group. Did a great job. It allowed me to press that one button and have my IR laser and my IR illuminator. Again, really basically bridging the gap from something that leaves you wanting with respect to illumination, even if this had onboard illumination, and pairing them together. So whether you're going to press this and have your IR illuminator and IR laser, or like when I had it set up on my quick hatch with my Maul, turn it to Viz, have it on a Viz light, and press it, have Viz light and Viz laser. Really cool being able to have those things together. Is there anything I don't care for? Well, as I mentioned, I ran into that one issue that first time at that Press Check Consulting night vision course. I'm not sure. I think it had to do with like how I was pushing the light. Never really ran into it again. One thing I will say is there's definitely a time and place to be able to turn something constant on. This is momentary. It's not a clicky switch. You can't like click it on and have it stay on. Doesn't matter. I think there's a use case where you click something on and it stays on. Can you still do it? Absolutely. You basically have to come back here, click that on, turn this to constant on. Is that a good solution? I don't know. Personally, I like to kind of have a clicky switch, but this absolutely does work. These switches are offered in both black and tan and can be set up either, again, on pick rail, or you can get them mounted to where they'll go on M-lock. Two different lengths, this one right here being 4.5 inch, which honestly will fit most rails. I have this one set up. It's really clean with the Arson machine, basically their cable management system, so you get everything nice close to the rail. You have more cable than you probably need, so I would recommend probably the 4.5 inch for most people's use. They're made here in the US, price-wise, you're looking at about 150 bucks. Is that expensive? Once you get into night vision, everything's expensive. Honestly, I think that $150 is really well spent and can definitely save you potentially a lot of money, in that a lot of people buy stuff, getting into it, and then eventually kind of remorse because you're like, man, the illuminator on this thing is terrible, or whatever. Which honestly, there's a lot of laser devices with bad onboard illuminators. And really what you need is a IR laser, like OTAL works fine, but you need that illumination. And so this allows you to pair any type of laser with a good illuminator, whether it's white light or IR, whether it's like a scout light, something along those lines. If you want to have a really clean setup, both spectrums, or really good Vexel laser illuminator like the Kiji by BE Meyers. Again, it basically fills that gap of having to basically upgrade this because you're like, dang, I need something better. Let me go drop all the money on a Maul. And you're like, no, if you need like an IR laser, this will absolutely do it. You can just pair it with a good illuminator and you're good to go. And this alleviates the switch part of it. I have before tried to run a laser with a switch and a separate switch for my IR illuminator. does not work well. 1 star, do not recommend. So this most certainly alleviates that, and I think there's definitely value depending on the setup you're running. But there'll be links down below, you can go check it out. And last but not least, if you appreciate my content and want to support it, greatly appreciate it, whether it's liking and sharing videos, going over to Teespring, picking up shirts, or support me directly through Patreon. Little as $1 a month, get early access to videos and access to our Discord, where if you have questions for me, happy to answer them over there. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.